Hi, this is Mashnu, and this is a game from round 3 of the Chess Olympiad in Istanbul. This time I've chosen for a game between Sandro Mareko and Erik Hansen. The white player is a grandmaster from Argentina, and it's from the match between Argentina and Canada. Erik Hansen is a Canadian master, international master. And in this game we see a Grunfeld defense, and white tries to find all kind of ways to attack. And well, let's have a look at the game. It's a very exciting game. d4, knight f6, c4, g6, knight to c3, d5, the Grunfeld defense, and white plays the so-called exchange variation. That's one of the most played variations here. e4, then take on c3, b takes c3, and the bishop goes to g7. Now knight f3 and c5 is the logical attack of black to attack the center of white. The idea is that after later trading the c takes d4, c takes d4, there comes a situation where black has a pawn majority on the queen side. So in an endgame, if the endgame is reached, then this pawn majority on the queen side can be something that's very strong. But on the other hand, there's always another side of the coin, and that's that white has now a majority in the center. Let's continue with the game. Bishop to e2 developing. I'm preparing to castle kingside. Castle kingside to black, and now rook to b1, placing the rook on this open file, so making it a bit difficult for this bishop to be developed, because it must stay defending b7 at the moment. And perhaps that's the reason why now black plays well, a bit unusual move. The most common move order here is to take on d4, but black played here b6. Let's have a short look at c takes d4. This is the most played move order. C takes d4, and then queen to a5 check, and after bishop to d2, then queen takes a2. So white sacrifices a pawn and is ahead in development here. And white can also use these open files here to attack these two pawns. And well, it's difficult to say whether this is better for white or for black. This is simply a variation that is often played, and it leads to the question whether the material advantage of black is more or less worth than the activity of the white pieces, because white is ahead in the development, and it's easy for white to place his bishop in an active position. But well, let's return to the game, because this is not a theoretical video about openings. It's about the game. b6 was played. Castle kingside, bishop to b7. That's the idea of b6, placing this light squared bishop on this diagonal towards the center. And here comes a moment when white sacrifices a pawn. If the move that he did was d5, by the way, d5. He played sacrificing the pawn on c3. Now, if I return just one move, we can see here that black is having quite some pressure against d4, and this bishop on b7 is pressuring against e4. Now, by moving d5, now white dissolves all this pressure. So e4 is not longer attacked, and the c5 pawn is not longer attacking the pawn on d4. So after bishop takes e3, black is a pawn up, but there is no more tension in the center, and that means that that white can try to start an attack on the king side. He controls the center, and he plays now h4. Wanting to advance to h5, trade there some pawns, and see if he can attack on the queen side. I'm sorry, on the king side. Queen to d6 was played now h5, knight to d7. At last, developing his knight. Now h takes g6, black retakes, and now rook to b3. So here we see another consequence of this pawn sacrifice, is that this rook can be now brought into the attack, gaining a tempo, attacking the bishop on c3. And this rook is very important on the third rank, because it's the third rank is completely open. That means that this rook can later perhaps go to h3 or to g3 to support an attack against the black king. Bishop to f6 was played now. From f6, black controls, well, tries to have influence on g5, so knight to g5 becomes a bit more difficult. Bishop to h6, attacking the rook. On f8, the rook goes to c8, and now white plays bishop to c4. So white has been placing all his pieces now into attacking positions. Black decides now to give the pawn back, to get some space, because it's quite difficult to maneuver now for black. These two rooks of black are, well, not really very active at the moment. This one is supporting this c5 pawn, but the c5 pawn cannot advance. The other rook is doing nothing at the moment. So it's understandable that black decides here to play the move b5. So he gives the pawn back after bishop takes, then later he can play c4, but first he plays bishop to a6, pinning the bishop because there's a rook standing here. But instead of playing bishop takes a6, white decided to take the knight on d7. So bishop takes d7 was played here, and after queen takes d7, the rook went to e1. Now if we look at this position right now, we see that, well, black has a bit more space than it had before, but white has these very strong central pawns that are ready to advance. The rook on e1 is supporting the e pawn, so a move like e5 is actually already being in the position, and then perhaps following by e6, and if we trade this f pawn for the e pawn, then g6 will be very weak. So these are the attacking ideas that are still here. Now black tried to keep white busy on the queen side by playing c4. The rook went to a3, attacking the bishop on a6, queen to d6 to defend the bishop, and now the rook is under attack, so bishop to c1 is played. e5 now, trying to fix the center, trying to prevent white from advancing the e-pawn, and white doesn't allow this. He takes on e6 en passant, and after queen takes e6, he plays the move e5. So now things are getting tactical. The bishop on f6 is attacked. He moved the bishop to e7. By the way, moving the bishop to g7 is not good either. Then knight to g5 is very strong, attacking the queen. The queen must stay defending the bishop here, so queen to c6, and then e6 is very strong. And white gets a very strong attack here. And, well, more or less the same happened actually in the game, but after bishop to e7. Also then, knight to g5 is a very strong move. The queen goes to c6, and now queen to g4. The queen is brought into the attack, preparing to advance the e-pawn, and then having an attack against g6. Here bishop to b7 was played, and a rook to g3. So the instructive part also of this attack is that white brings first all the pieces into the attack before advancing this pawn to e6. So preparing all the power, the firepower first, before breaking through. Now king to g7 was played, and the next move is a very beautiful one. It breaks the defenses of black in one blow. White played here knight takes f7. After king takes f7, he played e6 check, and in this position black resigned, because the power of the attack is going to be tremendous. Let's have a short look. I mean, of course, after the king moves, then queen takes g6 will follow after any move of black. But let's say, for example, the king goes to e8. We take on g6. Well, the king cannot go to f8 because then queen to g8 is checkmate, so he must go here. Then bishop to f4 prevents the king from escaping to c7. And what to do here? Let's have a look. Is there any possibility to save this game? Let's say if you play queen to e8, then there is a checkmate. After queen takes queen, king takes back, we check here, the king cannot go anywhere, so he must go to f8, and then we have bishop to d6 followed by taking on f8 with checkmate. And actually in this final position after e6 here, in all the variations, I checked this with the engine, the chess engine, in all the variations there is a checkmate for white within 10 moves. Well, perhaps you would like to have a look just as an exercise, to have a look for yourself. If you can calculate what happens after king f8 or after queen takes e6. Well, queen takes e6 is not a very very useful thing because you lose the queen and be checkmated soon, but perhaps king to g7, king to g8, you could just use this position as a calculation exercise. But well, this was the game. Here is when the Canadian master Eric Hansen resigned, and the Argentinian player Sandro Mareco had won his full point. Alright, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time on YouTube.